I've truly never seen happen before, and it's wrapped around the World Cup.
It's part of the connection and globalization to become one people. But the core of it will never go away, because the core of it is our spiritual connection to the divine. And that, I think, the ETs will actually be capable of strengthening. This is one of the things they're going to give us as a gift in open contact, is our complete history. All your secrets have to start coming out. Why do these aliens look so much like us? And I think that's backwards. They don't look like us. We look like them.
Darryl, if there's one thing that you would like to say to people about disclosure.
One of the things that's going to happen.
I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion, Darryl Anka. How you doing, Darryl?
Good, Alex. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I think you still have the record. I think you're now with this effort. You have the record of the most interviews on Next Level Soul. I think from back in the day when you were so kind to a young and fledgling podcast back in the day, because you were one of like 5 people I knew in the spiritual space.
Now you are the master.
Well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for coming. Well, listen, man, a lot of stuff. I've been wanting to get you back on the show for a little bit, because there's just so much stuff happening in the world. And the first question I have, because now you and I are both movie geeks and come from the movie world, so I have to ask you: did you see Disclosure Day?
I've seen it twice.
I felt it was remarkable, and it was Spielberg at his kind of.
I think so. Yes, I think so. I think it's a very important film. The thing I find interesting about it is how divisive it is. There are people that love it and people that hate it. And my feeling in talking to some of the people that didn't like it, and not only didn't like it, hated it, was, what are they seeing that I didn't see, or vice versa? What am I seeing that they didn't see? My general consensus is that I think most people that didn't like it don't understand that disclosure is actually a real thing that's happening. And they think it was just this sci-fi film that to them just kind of didn't make any sense. So I think they missed the important point of what Spielberg was doing was, look, I'm just trying to bring your attention to the fact in a dramatized way that this is actually going on in our society and is about to crack. It's about to happen some way, maybe not the way the film depicted, but this is about to happen. So get ready. And there were several things. I was very surprised at how many things he and the writer actually got right in the film that are accurate to what's going on.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that as well? What did they get accurately?
I mean, just the idea that, first of all, of course, that there has been a cover-up. The inference to certain events that happened, they got very accurate. The idea of the screen memories of the aliens appearing to be either animals or something else, they got accurate. There are several things in there, and it's interesting because, and obviously anyone listening to this, spoiler alert. There are a lot of spoiler alerts if we're going to talk about the movie, so you don't want to hear that.
Yeah, just fast forward a little bit. Yeah, fast forward a little bit, or click on the little icon, the link in the description. They'll move it along.
Yeah. The one thing that was interesting to me that I did not catch the first time I saw the movie, because it's sort of somewhat subtle, but I got it the second time, is, and I'll ask you this question: who was actually responsible for the release of the information in the movie? Who caused disclosure to happen?
You mean?
Yeah, who was behind it? Who was behind the actual disclosure that happened in the movie? Who caused it? Who set it in motion and caused it to happen?
Oh, who said it in? Well, the thing that keeps popping into my head is the president who walked in like drunk, showing it to Jackie Gleason, which I'm sure Nixon
No.
did.
And that was accurate too. That is
Yeah,
a story. He did show Jackie Gleason that stuff. But I mean, at the end of the movie, when they actually expose all the information,
sure.
who was
Who's in it?
actually who's the one that actually caused that to happen?
There's so much stuff going on, and I saw it a few weeks ago, so I can't remember who was it.
The alien.
Themselves.
The aliens
You're
are
right.
in charge of disclosure, not us. The aliens are in charge. The ETs are in charge. And that's also accurate,
Interesting.
in my opinion, in terms of what I understand, because it's gone from us being sort of in charge by keeping the information secret to the ETs being in charge in terms of the timing now of the release of this information, which is why we're starting to see a lot of the disclosure happening, is because they know it's inevitable, because now it's on the ETs agenda as to when it needs to happen. And they have to scramble and get this stuff out there so that they can position themselves to not look so bad. So they need to release this information because they know there's very little time left in which they have to hide it.
So is that why they've been doing all of these, the data dumps, if you will, into the public?
Data dumps, government, congressional hearings with whistleblowers and
Yeah.
stuff like that. All of this is coming out, and the data dumps, that they're releasing, they have a lot more to release. They're doing it as, slowly as they can possibly do it, but they're not in charge anymore. So, and they know there's a deadline here. And I think that is one of the things that the film actually also got very accurate, is we're not the ones in charge anymore about when this information ultimately comes out.
One thing that I found fascinating about Disclosure Day as well is that Spielberg, in many of his interviews, is like, this is not a sci-fi film. He literally
Right.
says that.
Right.
I
mean, it's interesting, he framed it as a chase movie in a sense.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it's still well done. And see, that's what's really interesting to me, is to watch how people that, didn't like that, really vehemently didn't like it. And I think they were going in expecting either, the touchy-feely Spielberg of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, or the mystery Spielberg of Close Encounters. This is not those movies. This is, folks, this is what's happening. Get on board. So he did it as a chase movie, but I think he was basically framing it as, you need to understand that this is actually happening in our society, and something is going to change.
What I really, and I think you will appreciate this, one of the things I saw it so clearly, I was like, oh, I can't believe he's in the know, in the sense that he introduces, or he spotlights channeling in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
With
fascinating.
Emily Blunt. And even though, again, it's not exactly how it went down, he also references the idea of the CIA mind control experiments and things like that, with what, Colin Firth is doing. There's just a lot of little breadcrumbs in there and little hints in there that, if you're familiar with the information to some degree, you start, oh, he got that, and yes, he's referring to that, and he's referring to this. So there's a lot of little things in there that I think that people that are not familiar with what's going on in UFO lore and disclosure lore, I think it just kind of went over their heads, and they feel like it just didn't make sense to them.
I think it's going to age well. I think that's a film.
I think so. I think so. People are going to look back at it and go, oh, he got a lot of this stuff right, and he was trying to tell us something. That's what the movie is. He's trying to tell us something.
Yeah, and anytime they ask him, he's like, "Have you ever seen anything?" He's like, "No, no one's ever shown me anything. No, they don't. They don't appear to me. Why wouldn't they appear to me? I've been their biggest PR person." Yeah. He said that. It's like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, and there's also some indications, however, that he has had discussions with people and been read into some things. Maybe not everything, but people have, in the military or in the government, have had some conversations with him. So he's probably included that in what's in the film as well. But no, I thought he did a great job with it. I enjoyed the film just generally as a movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the reactions that I'm seeing of people who just like really vehemently hated it, I just think
Yeah.
there's something going on there that's like a real divide, either fear-based unconsciously, or they just simply aren't familiar enough with the information to have recognized that he's trying to tell you something that you're just thinking is fictional, and it's not.
So let me ask you, Darryl, before we kind of, I want to really dive into, because you and I have never had that conversation about disclosure. And now it's so far, it's so much more in the public eye. Before we get into
Yeah.
that, I just want to ask you a simple question. After all these years that you've been on this planet, what still fascinates you about humanity?
Well, fascinates. I mean, on one hand, there is the limitless creativity that humans are capable of when they actually open themselves up to who they are and their purpose in life. And on the other hand, there's that amazing capacity to be in denial about what's right in front of their face. I just don't want to. I'm not going to look at that. Don't. No. 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 Because they haven't faced certain things within themselves that admission of those other things happening would force them to look at, and they're just not willing to do that. But this is what's happening on the planet now. It's like we're at the end of a cycle of isolation, and we're coming into a cycle of connection. And I think that's why originally, in my channeling, when Bashar talks about 2026 being the year of disclosure, he's not just referring to UFO information. He's saying all your secrets have to start coming out. And that's kind of what we're seeing, right? Exposure of this and these files and all these hidden secrets that people have been harboring for so long are now being put out into the public so that we can see what's been going on and finally say, is this how we want to continue, or do we want to change and do something different? So this is the year of disclosure in all sense, on all different kinds of levels. That's why we're seeing so much chaos, because everything's coming out in the open,
Yeah, and we have leaders around the world that are helping with that chaos.
Yeah, well, in a sense, looking at it on the positive side, they are souls that have chosen to be agents of disruption so that we can, in fact, see how much negative stuff we have been allowing. So it's kind of like, I'm going to put this in your face so blatantly that you can't miss it. And that you're going to finally decide enough is enough, and you're going to finally do something about it. In that sense, I think they're serving a positive purpose, even though consciously they may not understand what they're doing. But I think they're going to trigger a very big change in the near future, just because people are going, oh my God, look at all this stuff that's going on, and this is not working for us. We have to do something different.
Is it similar in as an analogy? Is it similar in nature where in an ecosystem, let's say a closed ecosystem, let's say the Everglades, the apex predator in the Everglades was the alligator before the anacondas went in and started messing up the thing. But alligators but that's a perfect example. The alligator, he kills, he eats, he does everything, but
Sure.
it is, and you look upon that like, oh, that's horrible. But without him,
Right.
things would go out of. So even the negative aspects of nature have a balancing part of it.
It's all one system. See, that's the thing. Humanity tends to think in compartmentalized ways. Like, I'm going to do something over here and it's not going to have any effect over there. And that's just ridiculous. It's one system. You can't tip the scale in one part without tipping the scales in the whole thing. I just saw a video the other day. They were talking about how, somewhere in the Middle Ages, they decided for some reason on a religious basis that cats were demonic, and they started hunting all these cats and killing them. And then, of course, the rat population exploded because there was no cats to kill them, and the rats brought the fleas that brought the Black Plague. So humanity basically almost erased itself in Europe because of this religious conviction that somehow cats were demons and we have to get rid of them. You do one thing to one part of it and the whole thing just falls apart. It's Amazing we
And
haven't learned that lesson yet.
and isn't that and from my understanding from the research I've done, that cats in the Middle Ages, witches, that whole thing with the witches,
Yeah.
people thought women who lived by themselves with a cat, a black cat,
Yeah,
a familiar cat. Yes, exactly. They were demonic, or they were evil, or this and that, because everybody else around them was dying except them. But they had the cat that was killing the rats, so the rats wouldn't get into their house.
Exactly.
And they wouldn't, but they couldn't understand that. Isn't that funny?
Well, yeah. And also, I mean, probably on an unconscious level, a lot of humans could pick up on the fact that cats can see spirits. They can see into other realities and things like that. And so again, they're going, oh, that's a demonic trait, without even consciously realizing what they were picking up on. But the thing I find so fascinating is their reaction is always, at first, it's the negative thing. It's the demonic thing, instead of, why couldn't that be an angelic power?
Right.
So the interesting thing is the people that are calling out all these demonic things are the ones, in a sense, who are steeped in the demonic fear. It's like they're the ones that are perpetuating the idea of the negative reality and the demonic thing, that the thing they're ascribing to demons is what their first reaction is, instead of saying, why couldn't this be something from God? Why couldn't it be a blessing? They always go in the negative thing because they're steeped in fear, which I would think would be more, if, demons did exist, would be more the hallmark of what the demons would be like, would be inducing fear in people. So, it's an ironic and paradoxical reaction that they don't seem to be capable of seeing within themselves when they react that way. And it's still going on. We're still talking about the idea. Some people that in religious circles are saying, oh, the UFOs and the aliens are demons,
Obviously.
And so it's like, again, why is that the first reaction? Why couldn't they be angelic beings or something else? That just, to me, illustrates and underscores their own fear-based beliefs, and has nothing to do with them. And to some degree, I find calling an ET a demon to be somewhat racist. It's sort of the same thing that people did in the past when they called people of color black devils. I mean, it's just this whole fear-based thing of calling out something that you're not familiar with. Right. And putting it in a category that, can make you not have to face them or persecute them because you just don't want to deal with it. So, to me, at this point in modern history, calling an ET or something from a UFO a demonic force is an extremely racist reaction.
Then you're establishing that demons are off planet as well.
They're running around in space in spaceships. These demons.
Exactly.
It's just ridiculous to me.
So let me ask you this: there's something going on right now in the world that is, there's so much chaos and all this negativity, but there's something very positive. There's one thing going on that I've seen that I've truly never seen happen before, and it's wrapped around the World Cup. Now, we've had World Cups for, I don't know how many hundreds of years, but decades now.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with it. I wasn't a fan. I mean, I've never been a soccer fan per se. I'm familiar with it. Yeah. I've become much more of a soccer fan in this World Cup for whatever reason, because I'm watching it more and all that stuff. But what I'm finding fascinating is, maybe because it's been 32 years since it's been in the US, the reaction of foreign people coming from foreign lands to the US, the love and the positivity about what we as a culture, as the US, have to offer them, and the truth behind who we are as a people, not our government, not our companies, but our people. And then you could turn the coin on that too. Is I'm sure you've traveled the world. A lot of the stuff that they say about other countries to us is like, I was afraid to leave the country for a long time when I was a young man because of like, oh God, you can't go down there. Oh my God, you can't go over there. There's people dying. There's people killing. And then I found out the truth when I went over to Europe and I went down to Mexico and I went down to different countries all around. I'm like, this is beautiful people. So what is your take on that? What is the significant significance of that spiritually and about our awakening in general right now? Because it is a movement, a global thing going on.
Yeah, again, it's about when you finally connect and you finally talk with one another, you find you have more in common than you have differences. And I think it's part of the connection and globalization to become one people, to understand, yeah, sure, we want to preserve different interesting things in our cultures and stuff like that. But it's not about homogenizing us. It's about having our differences be compatible and validating the differences so that we have a richer culture overall as a planet. We have to start thinking of ourselves as a planetary people, because again, that's going to be one of the things that happens when we have open contact, is because that's how the ETs look at us. One of the things that Bashar has been talking about lately in the channelings is reinforcing the whole idea that Earth is a school, right? It's a university, but he's also using that word in a different way. He's saying Earth is a universe city. It's one city in the universe. And it's a school. It's a university campus. So everyone on Earth belongs on the Earth campus. We share a university and we're taking different classes and studying different courses. He's trying to get us to really look at the Earth as one city and one campus and one school that we're attending, with all of these different kinds of lessons and classes and experiences we can have and share with one another to enrich our lives and learn our lessons and grow and change. But it's about connecting like they do on a university campus, where you have different students exchanging ideas. Oh, I learned this in this class and I learned this in this class. And, oh, what kind of class do you want to take? Oh, I want to study this. I want to study that. So when we start looking at the Earth that way, literally as a universe city, as a campus, as a school, then we can start appreciating all the differences as just the different classes that we're all taking and the different lessons that we're all learning, but we're all part of the same university, the same campus, and that's how the ETs see us.
So let me ask you, Darryl, with the ETs, or otherworldly beings, if you will, that are eventually going to be coming down here, and really not coming down, but that are already here, but they're going to make themselves known. Yeah, they make themselves known. From the movies that we've seen, obviously aliens have not gotten a pretty bad rap for the most part on most of those sci-fi films. But I remember two movies off the top of my head, and I'm curious on how, technically, how is this going to go down? How is this going to incorporate? How are they going to incorporate into us and things? So two movies that I can remember, and you've probably seen them: Alien Nation back in the 90s. That one was with James Caan, was really interesting, and District District 9.
Right.
Yeah. So that's like incorporating aliens into humanity's daily life, and there's just like another thing. How is this really going to go down from their point of view? Because there's so much fear. Fear.
Well, first of all, I think what's an interesting sign is that the last three major alien contact movies have all now been positive. You've got Arrival, which was positive.
Yeah. Yes.
You have Project Hail Mary, which was positive.
Oh, beautiful movie. Oh,
and now you have Disclosure Day, which ultimately is also a positive alien contact movie. So I think I'm seeing that trend going in that direction. But in terms of the technical approach to disclosure and to open contact, I do think that it's going to happen in phases to allow us to absorb and assimilate. The ETs understand what we are, and they understand how we react, and they understand what our culture is about. They've been observing us for a long time. They get it. They're not going to do anything that is really totally disruptive. They're going to give us an option to interact with them, but they're not going to force us into anything, because they understand it's going to take us a while to get used to the idea that we're not alone in the universe. So this is one of the reasons why I think disclosure and open contact is happening sooner than later, because they know, according to the cycles and the timing, that it's going to probably take us at least a decade or two to get used to the idea of the fact that we now have the option to interact with extraterrestrials and receive whatever benefits they're capable of giving to our society and absorbing all of that information, because different people, different cultures, different countries are going to react very differently to open contact. Some will be very willing to say, yes, welcome on board. And others will probably be saying, no, we're going to close our borders and we're going to deny the fact that the aliens are here because we want to retain some kind of authoritarian power and control over our population. And I think it's going to take a couple of decades for all of that to balance out, primarily because you've got a new generation coming up. Once open contact occurs, then that new generation, who will be taking over the world in another 2 decades, will always have been exposed to the existence of extraterrestrials, and it won't be weird to them. So they'll be more open as the old generation dies out. So I think it'll take a couple of decades, but I do think the ETs will present themselves in phases. So they might allow their ships to be seen more closely, to be on, we're already seeing a little bit oh, here's the weather report on the news, and now here's the UFO report today. We had this sighting and we had that sighting, let's discuss that. So I think that's going to become more normal. I think we're going to have really good shots of UFOs on the news that people can get you. Yeah, here it is. Here's a flying saucer. It appeared over Buenos Aires today, and here's 50 videos of that people took of this ship, and it's crystal clear. So, what is that, people? We won't be able to deny it anymore in that sense. And then the introduction will probably take place in some sort of, time release press conference or State of the Union or something along that line. But I think what is going to happen is the ETs are going to deal with or help us deal with different aspects of our society in phases. So in other words, what's going to happen when they show up with their knowledge and their experience and say, what's going to happen with our economy? Okay, let's deal with that. What are all the changes that might need to happen with our economy once ETs are here? Now we've got that under our belt. Okay, so maybe that would take a year to figure out. Now the ETs are going to come in and say, okay, well, what's going to happen now with your politics? And now we have to absorb all those changes. And now what's going to happen with this? And now what's going to happen with this technology? And now what's going to happen with this? So I think they're going to roll it out in phases so that we have time to get used to the idea of what it is they're capable of showing us, that in many cases is going to change the way we look at things, because they have the ability to demonstrate and prove certain things that we've been only speculating about in our society for a long time, because we have no real access to our history and certain other kinds of things. But they may have recordings of those things because they've been observing our planet for so long. It's like, you want to know if Atlantis existed? Here's a holographic recording of it. You want to see what the dinosaurs really looked like? Here's a holographic recording of it. And we're going, oh, wow, okay. All those questions can be answered because they've been around long enough to have observed us long enough to actually have proof of what those things really were.
And then also, just on a processing standpoint, if someone said, hey, do you want to see what the dinosaurs look like? And someone shows you a holographic file a la Clark Kent, or the Fortress of Solitude, or they show you Atlantis, then you just start to process that, because, and they're like, oh, by the way, you've been living in a cycle of destruction and rebirth for the last 250,000 years. So every 10,000 years or so, you reset yourselves. Right. Or every 24, or if you do the Yuga cycles, every 24,000 years, you reset yourself. Here's a history of all of that. Oh, the Anunnaki, here's what they were doing. Right, because
Bashar said this is one of the things they're going to give us as a gift in open contact is our complete history. Here's a recording of your complete history. Have fun. Take a look.
But that will upend all religion. That will
Yeah.
it will upend everything
Yes,
that we know.
yes, and yes, but that doesn't mean that it won't reinforce other aspects like
Yes.
spirituality and things
Right.
like that. So it's okay that certain things, I mean, that was another thing that I really appreciated in Disclosure Day was the fact of what the nun said to the novitiate.
Oh God, it was beautiful, wasn't it?
It's
Oh, I
like,
remember.
aren't we the supreme creation on earth? That
Oh,
doesn't
that
mean
was
there aren't other beings, So however they need to relate to it.
Hey guys, I really hope you're enjoying this conversation. And the one thing I've noticed recently is that most of you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel. It's free and it really helps us out a lot. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like, and share this content so we can continue to help elevate the consciousness of the planet. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the conversation.
I don't think it's actually going to, yes, religion may go away in the form that it is in now in certain ways, because we won't necessarily need the trappings of it. But the core of it will never go away because the core of it is our spiritual connection to the divine. And that I think the ETs will actually be capable of strengthening. And I think it will make Earth a more spiritual place and a more connected place, because they also may have the technology to actually be able to talk to spirits. And if we can actually talk to people that were alive and are now dead and actually go, hey, we're still around, we're just in a different dimension. Well, what is that going to do? I mean, it's like, well, now I can talk to Uncle Fred, who's been dead for 10 years. Here he is. And we can have a conversation because the ETs brought us technology that will allow us to do that. Well, now I have a million questions for Uncle Fred. What's the afterlife really like? And all that kind of stuff. Well, here it is. This is the way it works. This is what it's all about. Now we don't need a middleman. We can talk to Uncle Fred, the dead guy, ourselves,
So with all of this kind of, upheaval, if you will. I mean, this is definitely stirring the pot. Everything you just said, I find it wonderful. I think it's going to be interesting if this kind of technology. It'd be the equivalent of going to the Congo and going into a village and taking an iPhone. I mean, literally, that would be.
Exactly.
It would look magical to them. This would look magical to
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. But if these ETs are even 1,000 years ahead of us, let alone millions of years ahead of us, they may have these kinds of technologies and these abilities,
Yeah, well, of course. Now, but the biggest question is, why are they doing it, and why are they doing this now? They've been watching us for hundreds of thousands of years at some
Well,
possibly.
like you said, it does go in cycles. And there are indications that they were among us many thousands of years ago. All of our legends of the gods and all this kind of stuff that we ascribe that may actually have been representations of extraterrestrials, with
like Stargate, the movie Stargate.
yeah, basically that theory. So if they come at certain times, which according to them are the natural cycles of checking in with what's going on here, well, we're at that cycle again. That's why we're having disclosure. That's why we're talking about open contact. It's like they were here, let's just say, 12,500 years or more ago when Atlantis was around. Now they're back. Maybe that's the cycle. It's like, well, we're going to come around and check in every 10, 12, 24,000 years. And that's just what they do to check in on the neighbors, check in on their family, because in many cases, we may actually be genetically related to them. And it's like, what are the kids doing? Let's go check on the kids, and I make that analogy in jest, but also in all seriousness, because it's kind of like, what, folks, we're down here, a bunch of kids, and we're having all these tantrums. And it's kind of time for the adults to step in the room and say, cut it out. You need to grow up. So I think that's one of the things that we will experience in open contact is the adults are here now. You got to pay attention because you're kind of trashing your room, and we can't allow you to trash this place. This is an important school for souls, and we're not going to allow you to wreck it and ruin it So you need to learn some things and you need to remember them, because you've obviously forgotten. So,
And the funny thing is when you said that, there's another movie that's, I think, very positive in the extraterrestrial space that doesn't get spoken about enough.
mm,
Abyss.
yes. Yeah.
And that's literally what they are. They like, hey, everyone calm down.
Calm down. Yeah.
You're not the biggest boy in the block.
Right.
Relax, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much more that you have access to when you just chill out and open up to what the universe really has to offer, and just get over this whole fear-based reality that you've created, which is really just a massive illusion, because there is enough for everyone. There has to be. It's just the way the universe works. You just have to learn how to access it, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that the government has started to release, which I assume is to try to start getting us used to this whole scenario of what it is. But some of the footage that you're seeing, and in congressional hearings, because, I'll be honest with you, Darryl. I mean, I haven't spoken about this very often. Anytime it's ever come up on the show, it's been because I trust you and I love you. So you've mentioned it here and there within our conversations, but I've never gone deep into it because I grew up on the X-Files and tinfoil hats and conspiracy theories and all of that kind of stuff. And it just started to give us like, you know what? I don't want to go there. Yeah. But now it's so in everyone's face, and the governments around the world are they're officially starting to put out footage and videos. And
well, again, they have to, because I think they know this is inevitable and there's nothing they can do to stop it. So they have to position themselves to go along with it in whatever way works for them and makes them look like they're participating in the release of the information that they've been holding on to forever, But
I saw some of these vehicles flying in the air, and one of them I saw got shot with a missile, like a big ass missile,
and it bounced off.
It bounced off. Then the guy who shot it and everyone who watched, like, we've never seen anything like that. Whatever it touches, it at least explodes. It didn't explode. It was just kind of like and it just kind of like
parts of it
wobbled.
Yeah, parts of the missile, I think, broke off. The UFO wobbled a bit and just course corrected and kept on going. And what was interesting too is I think we saw in that video the pieces that came off the missile went with it, like it was caught in the UFO's field, and the pieces went with the UFO, at least for a little bit. So yeah, I mean, there's really nothing we can do to them in that sense. I'm not worried about them at all, the ETs. They're so advanced, and even to the point of, I think they're, demonstrating in many ways, like that video with the missile bouncing off. There's nothing you can do. The incidents that have happened several times where UFOs have positioned themselves over nuclear missile silos and completely scrambled the launch codes. It's like, you're not going to have a nuclear war. We're not going to allow it, because that would ruin the campus, that would ruin the school. So they're willing to allow us to learn our own lessons, but they're not willing to allow us to destroy our ability to learn any more lessons. The Earth is too valuable for that.
Well, it's the equivalent of, like, a child. Like, we'll let you learn your lesson, but we're not going to let you walk off the edge of this building.
Of course, there are things we have to do to protect your ability to be here in this school and learn what you came to learn, and we can't just let you burn the school down.
So let me ask you, with the aliens or the extraterrestrials who are coming in the scope of the universe, are there, because everyone we're talking about in this conversation are very positive, they're very advanced, they're here to help us, all that stuff. But if movies have taught us anything, there are the nefarious energies as well. Is that a thing? And is there something protecting us all these years?
Well, yes. I mean, it's not that there can't be relatively negative entities out there, or simply entities who just don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, or don't even know about us, and couldn't care less. But I think that the ones that have been mostly dealing with us are looking out for us and are keeping any negative influences at bay. Because again, this is an important place to them, for souls to learn and to grow, and they don't want anything to happen to it, especially at this very delicate time of transition into a new cycle. So I think for the most part, they're keeping things at bay. It doesn't mean that there aren't maybe negative entities out there. The only other thing about that is, I don't think there are that many, because once you allow your technology to take you into outer space in the way that they do, I mean, what would you actually need our planet for when you have unlimited resources out in space that are probably 1,000,000 times greater than what you could find on Earth? There's so much water, there's so many minerals, what would you need to come to Earth to get that you didn't have in another solar system that you easily have access to? So
Costco,
the idea...
Costco's.
Yeah,
They don't have Costco's.
They don't have the chocolate.
$1.50 hot dogs. I mean, you can't go
Exactly. That's worth conquering a planet for. I mean, really, when you stop and think about it, even on that pragmatic level, it just doesn't make sense. It'd be like saying, I'm going to ignore this pile of gold over here to get one gold coin over there. It just doesn't make sense pragmatically. On another level, I think that we don't yet associate, because we have stagnated in this particular area quite a bit, we don't associate the idea of technological advancement with spiritual advancement. And I think that the beings that really get out into space have learned what the universe is really all about and are operating from a completely different point of view about how we're all connected and how things actually work. And I think we're missing that component. We see it a little bit, and I forget the name of the effect, but the astronauts all experience that. Once they're out there and they're looking back at Earth, they go through this profound change of recognizing how everything is connected and how important it is to preserve that for humanity to go in a more positive direction. So I think that when we really have enough experience going out into space and looking back at Earth and understanding the connections that exist between us and other beings out there, I think you just lose that idea of, I need to be some kind of a weird negative conqueror and take over this and take over that. You just don't see things that way anymore from that perspective. You actually elevate to a different way of looking at the universe. So I don't think there are that many negative entities out there in space, and the ones that may still be that way may be more confined to their own world and aren't really able to get here.
It seems like you can't. From my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as we have evolved as a species, and I use this example often, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, they didn't have machine guns or rocket launchers or airplanes or anything like that, because they would have, or a bomb, like the bomb, they would have destroyed the planet with their mentality and their level of consciousness. So as our consciousness grows, we are able to receive information about these higher end technology. So like from the early 1900s, these last 125 years, we've made more advancements than the last 6,000 years, which is insane. We're used to it, but it's insane. So I'd imagine that's the same way with aliens in another planet, where they're like, if they're able to travel through space, their consciousness has to be at a level that the universe has given them that kind of technology.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's very important for us to make that connection to them, because we need to start seeing ourselves from their perspective, through their eyes, because they see us very differently. And we need to understand how powerful we are and how connected we are. And once we do that, I think we will have a very big shift in our behavior based on how we see ourselves. Because a lot of people on Earth now don't see themselves as being very worthwhile. There's a lot of issues of deservability and worthiness and, stuff like that. And it just prevents us from really knowing what we are as souls and how powerful we are and how much we're exactly on a soul level, just like the ETs. We have to see ourselves from their perspective in order to really understand how to behave differently.
What do they understand about consciousness that we're still trying to grasp? Because obviously they're more advanced consciously than we are. And that's a large question. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think they understand that everything is consciousness. Everything is aware in its own way. Consciousness is everywhere. It is everything. We're made out of whatever you want to call it. You know, God, Goddess, all that is, source, existence, what have you. There's only one thing to make everything from. I mean, I'm starting to see more physical, more manifestations, more awareness of that idea, even on a physics level, because one of the things that Bashar has talked about before many times, that now certain quantum physicists are starting to talk about, is this idea that we're calling the single electron theory.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea basically is that there is only one electron in existence. Not one kind of electron, one electron. And that it has the capability of actually moving at infinite speed and making it seem as if there are multiple electrons, because we're actually seeing the same electron appearing next to itself over and over and over again, because it can move at infinite speed. Because if there's only one electron in existence, then there are no rules that prevent it from moving as fast as it wants to move. And if it can move at infinite speed, then every single thing that we're looking at and everything we are is all made from the same electron, building itself up over and over again, interacting with itself in multidimensional ways. And so that's kind of a simplistic idea, but it's an idea of looking at even physical reality as actually being the product of one thing. And that we really are, our bodies really are made out of the same thing, literally, as the computer I'm looking at, as the desk I'm sitting in front of, as the chair, as the floor, as the house, as the planet, as the trees. It's literally the same electron in the ultimate time-sharing reality of forming everything in the universe, because it can move at infinite speed and therefore can play all the roles it needs to play in building up the atomic structures that we perceive. So, you know, even on that level, we're starting to see that everything may be one thing. Everything is connected. Consciousness is simply the idea that it's aware of itself. Bashar sort of used the analogy of a cake to sort of describe this. If you have a slice of cake, if I give you a slice of cake and you decide you want to analyze what's in it, and you say, well, I have analyzed it, and I found that there is egg in there and milk in there and flour in there and chocolate in there and what have you, sugar. Well, if you have a slice of cake and it has all those things, then that means the whole cake must also have had all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're conscious, the whole must be conscious, because we're a slice of the whole. So the ingredients we exhibit, even though it might be exhibited differently in different aspects of existence, we still contain self-aware consciousness. That must mean that in some way, shape, or form, so does the whole of existence. It's one of the ingredients of existence, is this self-awareness. So we are conscious, it is conscious, everything is aware, and everything is made out of whatever that material is, whatever that consciousness is.
Are there universal laws that prevent advanced civilizations from interfering in our business?
Well, yeah, because again, everything is in a sense sacrosanct. Everything is, every soul makes a decision for what lessons it wants to learn and what it wants to experience. And in a sense, that is all of the different aspects that we are of source, of existence. We're all unique. We're all unique pieces of the whole puzzle picture. And you can't change the shape of that puzzle piece. It is what it is. So if that puzzle piece, being an individual, whatever that is saying what I am requires that I choose to learn things this way, well, nothing can really violate that. So it's kind of like recognizing that every way in which something can be done or learned or experienced is a part of the whole. There is no reason to change it. There's no reason to violate it. Now, you can share information that may be something that's important for that particular unique puzzle piece to absorb as part of its journey. But you have to let that puzzle piece or that individual decide that that is correct for it. You can't decide that for it. So the idea is to understand the absolute respect and the absolute recognition that everything everyone is doing and experiencing is part of that path of that unique individual and is important for the overall experience of existence, for that to happen, for it to experience itself that way as that piece of itself. So there is no reason to change it or force it to change. There is only an exchange of information that allows it to know there are different options if it is relevant for that individual to choose that. You're giving them the option to increase their ability to express more of the uniqueness that they are. And therefore, there's just no reason to force anything on anyone.
Darryl, let me ask you, because I just literally had a mystic from India in the studio the other day, and we were talking about disclosure because I wanted to get his point of view about it.
Sure.
His point of view, he was very frank about it. He's like, they're our family. They are
exactly.
They're who we are. It's like they're family. They're like old relatives coming in.
Yeah.
But I found it very interesting coming from a Indian yogi, a master, saying these things. I was just finding it fascinating. But then as you do more research, you realize the Bhagavad Gita there's aliens all in that thing everywhere.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of our ancient texts are actually talking about extraterrestrials. We've just been calling them gods, for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, and I can describe the idea of our genetic connection, at least in a couple of ways. And that is the idea. I mean, let me back up. A lot of scientists have an issue with the idea of a lot of the reports when people say they've encountered some kind of extraterrestrial being. And they say, well, why are all these reports talking about how these aliens look so much like us? They're humanoid. They have a head, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. Why do these aliens look so much like us? And I think that's backwards. They don't look like us. We look like them. So the idea is that either through deliberate seeding of DNA from the extraterrestrials to Earth, or through the device that we know of as panspermia, where genetic material comes on asteroids and comets, crashes into the Earth, somehow survives and thrives and evolves. So I think we don't quite understand yet the mechanisms of how genetic material is spread throughout the galaxy, either deliberately or through natural means, that cause certain pockets of the galaxy to develop life that is similar on different planets. So either, again, deliberately, that would obviously make it similar, because if I'm taking some DNA from myself and putting it on another planet, well, yeah, there will be environmental things that will make it look a little different than I look, but it's probably still going to follow the same basic template if the conditions are correct. So I would expect it to look somewhat humanoid. And again, if panspermia is delivering genetic material to different areas in the galaxy that's the same genetic material, when it finds similar conditions on one planet to another, it's probably going to follow a template and have something that looks similar. Now, yeah, I'm sure there are aliens that look nothing like us at all in different parts of the universe, but that's a different genetic spread. It's a different genetic, release of that material. So sure, there's going to be both. There are going to be ones that look like us that are probably genetically related to us very closely, and there are going to be those that are not like us at all and will be not even distant cousins. So yeah, I think the ones that we're dealing with that look a lot like us are family, literally genetically connected to us. And I think that's one of the things that's going to happen in open contact is they understand that, let's say, people have said, well, Pleiadians supposedly look a lot like us. They're like distant cousins. And I think they're going to be one of the first extraterrestrials that are, aside from hybrid extraterrestrials, combination of human and other, being like a gray. I think they're going to be one of the first to reveal themselves because we're not going to freak out so much if they look a little bit like us. It's easier to take. It's easier to absorb. It's like, okay, well, they're not that different, so I guess we can get used to them. So I think they're going to deliberately roll out that way too. They're going to introduce the ones that look more like us first, and then they're going to, over time, introduce us to ones that don't look like us, because now we'll be used to the idea that the ones that don't look like us don't want to harm us either. And, oh, well, you guys are friends with them, so I guess we can be friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so before the Palladians will come before the predators come, is what you're saying.
Yes, but I don't think the predators themselves will come. I understand that the different, species may have different agendas and all that. And even when we talk about things like the Greys, I don't think we're lumping them all into one category. I think there are different factions of Greys that have different understandings and different agendas. So I think first we're going to be told who the hybrid extraterrestrials are that have been living and working among us for decades and helping us move forward with technology and certain other areas of discipline. And then we'll be able to interact with them. And then maybe the more pure extraterrestrials, like the Pleiadians and so on and so forth, will then reveal themselves as well once we're used to the fact that hybrid extraterrestrials have been among us for so long that we don't even blink an eye that they're here,
Very much like a District 9 or an Alien Nation kind of scenario.
Yeah,
like they're just here, and they're just like,
here.
hey, they're partners. They're our partners. Yeah.
We will be told who they are so we can interact with them openly. That's one of the first phases, I believe, of open contact. These are the beings that have been among you all this time. Now you can openly address them and interact with them.
One thing I found fascinating, I was thinking the other day that, on Earth, there is an endless, I mean, literally uncalculable experiences that a soul can have. I mean, the different combinations of circumstances, religions, species.
That's what makes this
countries.
School so unique.
It's very powerful. But then I was thinking, because I've spoken about this with near-death experiencers and mystics as well, and even mediums who speak to the other side, that they say that, well, obviously, we're not the only show in town. There are billions and billions of other shows. So the experiences of a soul doesn't have to be through human, and that's a big concept for people to understand. So can you talk a little bit about the concept of reincarnation in the sense that, like, because I've heard from people who've read me, they're like, you've been on Earth a lot. You love Earth, and you've been here a lot because you've experienced it. But you've done this elsewhere. Sure. You've gone to because those experiences on other planets, as other species in other scenarios, give a whole other different lessons than you could even get here.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's like going to another university.
Right.
I'm going to Harvard instead of Yale today. It's like I'm going to go to another school. It's because there are different kinds of lessons to learn and different experiences to have on different planets, which are different cities in the universe, different schools in the universe. So of course, a soul has the freedom to choose whatever. So, maybe, you can have 5 incarnations or 20 incarnations or 200 incarnations on some planet in the Pleiadian systems. And then you decide, you know what? I think my next incarnation, I'd like to explore what's going on Earth. And you decide to have an incarnation here. The soul is free to do that. And by the way, that's really the difference in the terminology between an old soul and a new soul. It's not about the age of the souls. Souls are all the same age. They're eternal. The idea of a new soul and an old soul is how many incarnations you've had on a particular planet or a particular reality. So let's say you decide that you're coming to Earth, and maybe you've tried Earth incarnations 10 times. But maybe there are souls that have had 1,000 Earth incarnations. That's an old soul because they're more experienced about Earth. And you're a new soul because you only have 10 incarnations on Earth. But that doesn't mean you might not have had 10,000 incarnations somewhere else. So it's old soul, new soul is about the amount of experience you have in a particular place. It has nothing to do with the age of the soul itself. It has to do with the kind of experience you have in a particular reality.
Is open contact going to be a catalyst for the greatest spiritual awakening humanity has ever had?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Because again, beings that are as advanced as some of these ETs appear to be are operating on an energy frequency level that is very similar to spirit. In fact, I think that's one of the things that causes us a little trepidation when we encounter them, is we pick up on this vibration they're giving off, this energy frequency they're giving off, that is so close to the idea of the frequency of spirit, of non-physical reality, that when exposed to that frequency, our primitive brain interprets that as if we're about to die, because it represents the spirit realm. And so we back away and we're afraid because we go into survival mode. We go into fight or flight mode. So I think that's one of the things that we have to get used to, and why Bashar has been saying, you need to meet us halfway. You need to upgrade your frequency. You need to raise that frequency so that you're not so different energetically from us, so that you're more compatible with us, because you have this reaction to that high vibration as if exposure to us is going to annihilate you. It's not. It's just that that's the way you react to spirit energy, because you're so compartmentalized and your vibrational frequency is so low that it's like, he's used the analogy of like, we're a very slow spinning gear and they're a very high speed gear. And if you bring those two things together, you're going to strip the gears. So you have to speed up to be more compatible so the gears can mesh, and so that there is no damage done to our psyche. We don't go into psychic shock because we're exposed to something that to us represents death, the afterlife, because we have such a fear of death, instead of just understanding that we're just transitioning to our natural state, which is a soul.
But it sounds, when you said that it sounded almost like ayahuasca or psilocybin or one of those things, that you're so opened up and you are thrown, the slow and the fast gears are thrown together, that you feel like you're going to die. So many people
exactly
on that kind of stuff.
Exactly. But when you get used to that, that doesn't happen anymore. So you have to accept the higher frequency as something that is more representative of your natural soul vibration. And in fact, there's something very interesting about the latest Dan Brown book. You're familiar with him?
Yeah, I know Dan Brown. Yeah.
Da Vinci Code and all that.
Yeah.
But his latest is The Secret of Secrets. That's his latest book. Okay. And yes, it's a fictional story, but the research behind the story is real. And it's all about what is consciousness, right? And one of the things that he talks about in there is the idea that, what Bashar calls the teachers of the earth, like ayahuasca, DMT, things like that, that give you these expanded experiences, these expanded perspectives. He's basically saying that in the human body, there's this chemical called gamma aminobutyric acid. It goes by the acronym GABA, GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid. And this chemical acts like a filtering system to filter out most of what we don't need from our reality perception. So when you take one of those drugs, that's a more natural representation, he's saying you're not hallucinating, you're seeing more of what is actually there in reality. That's a huge difference in the way you look at what's happening in those experiences. It's opening you up. It's dropping the GABA in your system. It's removing the filter, and it's allowing you to actually see more of what's actually there that we simply don't normally process. So yeah, that's a big difference. And I think that's one of the things that happens in the channelings. And I think it's one of the things that happens in exposure to beings of higher frequency. It's like taking a drug, it lowers the filter and we start seeing more of reality. And most people can't handle that. They're not ready to process that. So we have to do it in steps. We have to get used to it.
So in that Dan Brown book, The Secrets of Secrets, you're saying that that's what he said in the book, right?
That is what he said in the book, and it's based on real research.
Yeah. So that's research. So all of that is based on real research. So that makes a lot of sense, because if you just look throughout our reality right now, there's things that are happening right now around us that we have no ability to connect with or even observe. Radio waves, gamma rays, microwaves, all that stuff's been there forever. Gravity
and not even the stuff that's typically invisible to us. Even our scientists know that just in terms of processing what is physically around us, we're already filtering out like probably 90% of it, just so we can get along and have a day and do our business without going crazy. So we already have a whole bunch of these filters and blinders on us just so we can have a quote unquote normal life. Because if we could actually see more of what's going on, I mean, we would just be like, I'm going to be staring at that tree for the next 12 hours. Just because of all the amazing things I can see,
Which is what happens when people go on that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Like, because they're seeing more of what's actually happening there. And it prevents you from living the life you chose to live to learn your lessons. You just go in,
So they just sit there like, hey, man, so let's so what are you saying, man? Like you see those in movies, you see those in stories, and you see I've actually seen friends of mine who've done that you'd like literally have a conversation with a plant.
Absolutely.
For 7 hours.
Exactly. Because you can, because the filter is down. You're not hallucinating. You're seeing more of what's there.
So then is it our job, not our job, but is it our evolution to eventually continuously bring down that veil and see the man behind the curtain as in Oz, slowly but surely, so we can accept all of that, so we can just get a more full experience of this.
It's bringing more of your soul through the physical form. It's, in a sense, bringing heaven down to earth, not running away from earth to get to heaven. Bringing that energy down to earth and having earth be more of a representation of the soul's pure energy. Yeah. That's, in a sense, our job.
How can we mitigate the insane amount of fear that humanity has about not only disclosure, but generally, because it's one of the biggest things that is hurting us, is this fear. Well,
we have to understand how belief systems work and why we choose to believe what we believe. And this is where Bashar is very good at delivering tools that allow us to get in touch with understanding our psychology, how it works, and how we can change it more easily. Recently, this has been interesting. He's referred to himself for a long time as a first contact specialist. But recently, he's actually been saying, but what being a first contact specialist means is I'm actually a diplomatic psychologist. I understand how human psychology actually works. Here's the mechanism. And when you want to change from a negative fear-based belief to a more positive one, this is how the system works. This is what belief systems are. This is how you get in touch with what they are, how you get in touch with why you're buying into what you're buying into, and how you change it. So we all have to understand what that process is, how to get in touch with whatever we believe to be true about ourselves, why we believe it to be true, why it's just a story that we're telling ourselves, and how we can change the story. So he's very good at delivering information that actually allows us, gives us a toolkit to go through that process, let go of the fear-based beliefs, and not be afraid of choosing something different. That's the big thing, is a lot of times beliefs, because they're designed to perpetuate themselves so you can have a physical experience, will do things to make you not want to let them go. Because that's all they're trying to do, is perpetuate themselves so you can continue to have a physical experience. So when we don't care what the positive beliefs tell us because we enjoy that. But the fear-based beliefs can only use fear-based tools. So the fear-based belief is saying, if you stop believing in this thing, I'm going to make something worse happen. So stay where you are. Don't let that go. Because even though you know this isn't necessarily your best option, it's safer to stay where you are. If you go and try to follow your passion, you go and try to live your dream, oh, so many bad things could happen that you're better off just not trying. And then you never try. So you have to hear that as a story that the belief is telling you so you won't let it go, as a self-perpetuating mechanism, instead of hearing it as a fact, as inevitable. Because it's not. It's just a story. It doesn't mean it's actually true that something worse is going to happen. And you can prove that to yourself by being willing to know that that's just a story and that I prefer a different story, and take the action that is representative of the different story and see that you actually get a different result. And it's not about, oh, horrible is going to happen to me because I did this. That's just part of the story that keeps you in the fear-based belief, because that's what fear-based beliefs do to perpetuate themselves. Because you have to have a belief in something being true in order to have a physical reality experience, because physical reality isn't real. It's an illusion. It's a projection of consciousness. So it's our belief systems that make physical reality seem solid, because it uses emotions and thought processes and behaviors to get a reflection that reinforces the belief. So a belief, both positive and negative, have to use emotions to make you feel that what it's telling you is real, to make you think that what it's telling you is real, and to get you to behave as if what it's telling you is real, so that you get the reflection that what you just did is real, because you get a reflection of what you put out. Because reality is just a mirror. So it's just showing you this is what you believed in. You bought into this. You behaved as if you felt like you knew it was real. You thought it was real. You behaved as if it was real. Therefore, you get the reflection that it's real. Because whatever we say is what reality is. So you just have to understand that mechanism, and then you can change it.
Darryl, if there's one thing that you would like to say to people about disclosure, to put them either at ease or to get them to understand what's going to happen with open contact, the first open contact, what would that be?
These beings are part of our family. We are part of their family. This is a chance to go from being Homo sapiens to Homo galacticus. It's part of our evolution. This is what we have collectively decided is important for our species to understand at this point, is that we are not and never have been alone. And it's now time to meet our cousins. It's now time to meet the rest of the family. And in a sense, it's a family reunion. It's not going to be something that is going to harm us. It is something that is going to allow us to expand and to grow and to learn and to become more of who we truly are as souls. It's going to help us get in touch with ourselves. It's going to help us understand how to do things for the benefit of humanity, of everyone. And it's going to allow us to experience ultimately in time over the next few decades, truly experience heaven on earth. It's our birthright to do so. And it's okay to engage with that. Nothing is going to happen other than more revelation of what we are and who we are as aspects of all that is. So kind of, in a sense, not meaning to mean this in a mean way, we need to get over ourselves.
And then some, my friend, and then some. I wanted to ask you this. Do you believe, because in the last 100 years specifically, 125 years or so, there has been an explosion of the sci-fi basically genre. There was before it was H.G. Wells, if I'm not mistaken, who started.
Yeah, H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, and
those guys. Those were the ones that started it, and then they inspired.
Well, yes and no, because there are actually some ancient tales that do lend themselves.
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah.
But of course, in a sense, they may not have actually been describing science fiction. They may have actually been describing real events, but we read it as science fiction. But yes, there's been a resurgence of those ideas again, I think, as preparation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you believe that like people like George Lucas or Gene Roddenberry, which do the giant franchise, or James Cameron, who get these kind of ideas, not implanted, but they inspired by
they access. Yeah, you see, the thing of it is you only get what you're on the level of vibrationally. So people that are willing to act on their passion and be creative have the ability to access information that's available to the ETs as well. And they bring down ideas that can help. Because again, unconsciously, on the collective unconscious level, we know that we chose to have these experiences of open contact at this time in our lives. So we're going to have different people accessing different things, whether consciously or not, that are going to fall in line as part of our preparation to get used to this idea. You know, like I said, anyone born after 1969 knows we've always been in space. That's not unusual for that generation. And when ETs make open contact, anyone born after that is going to know we've always interacted with extraterrestrials, and that's not unusual. That's the way it is. That's normal. So with each of those exposures to different ideas, there could be extraterrestrial life. And yes, we've discovered all these exoplanets. And now we're considering that, maybe it's possible aliens can get here. The math says it might be possible. We may not have the technology, but the math says it's doable. We can actually travel the stars. Maybe there's wormholes we can go through that make shortcuts for us. We're now considering all these different things that start erasing all the objections we had to this in the past. So I think on whatever level, whether it's conscious, unconscious, or what have you, collectively, we have been preparing ourselves for this to happen, because this is the next great leap in the evolution of humanity.
And what part does Mars play in all of this? Is there a part that Mars has played in the past or will play in the future for humanity?
Yeah, I think so. I do think there was a civilization a long time ago on Mars. And I think in some ways, we may be the Martians, material from Mars, we know, has been traveled to Earth based on meteoric bombardment on the planet that has shot debris into space. Some of those Martian asteroids and meteors have landed on Earth. It might have brought genetic material from those civilizations to Earth, and we may actually be the Martians. That's one theory. I don't know if there's any proof of that at the moment, but again, on a soul level, I think, again, there may have been a civilization that souls incarnated into. Now that civilization is no longer there, now they can incarnate on Earth. I think Earth is like a real melting pot for different stories. Maybe the idea of Atlantis redoing itself and coming to a more positive conclusion because it was destroyed. Maybe the Martian civilization story. playing out on Earth because it got destroyed and looking for a better outcome. Maybe the ancient Orion civilizations of oppression and suppression are playing out on Earth. I think there's so many stories. This is what makes Earth as a school so unique, is there are so many exchange students from so many different places in the cosmos playing out a story here, finding a way to make that story have a more positive ending. And I think that's why some things are just so chaotic here, is just you have so many different things going on from so many different places, that it's a real melting pot of the cosmos. And that's one of the things that makes Earth so unique and so valuable.
Darryl, where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing?
Anything that Bashar's been talking about, they can certainly go to bashar.org, bashar.org, if they want to find out how I'm following my passion with the escape room that my wife and I have in Los Angeles. They can go to boggledescaperooms.com, BOGGLED, boggledescaperooms.com, and they can come here and listen to us chat.
Yes, and for people who go to the escape room, there might be a chance that you have a sighting of Darryl himself.
Maybe. Not always.
Maybe.
There.
Not
Maybe.
always there. You're a busy man, but every once in a while, you're the game master every once in a while, which is
every once in a while.
It's trippy. It's trippy for sure. And do you have any final words for the audience about disclosure, about where we are, what's happening in the world, anything you'd like to say to leave everybody with?
Well, again, I think now we're at a point where this is really inevitable. And I think that it's important to be more of who you are, to be more prepared and vibrationally compatible with the idea that humanity is going through a very large evolutionary transition and transformation. And that's just what the times are all about. It's all about transformation and transition. So I think we need to go with that flow. And I think things will be much easier if we just become more of who we are. Because really the toughest thing in the world, even though we think the opposite, is trying to be someone we're not. And everyone tries to do that. We're always told, be this, be that. You have to do this. You have to do it that way. There's a unique path for everyone because we are all unique. You just have to find that path and know that it'll work for you. So being yourself is the most important thing, and it will bring you everything you need to fulfill you in life, including what's going on collectively with all of us.
My friend, it is always a pleasure and honor speaking to you, my brother from another mother. I appreciate you so much, my friend, and thank you again for everything that you're doing.
Pleasure to speak with you always. I really appreciate the doorway, the window that you've created for conversations like this. I think that's a really important part of the work of sharing information to help people prepare for the changes that are coming up. So I applaud what you're doing as well. It's extremely crucial. So thank you.
Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
We are living in unprecedented times. We're seeing changes on levels that have never really been seen before.
We have been conditioned out of who we really are.
Are we really free?
What questions you ask, your life becomes an answer to it.
The physical world is not the highest reality.
But the soul never dies. The soul is eternal.
You can heal and never forget it.
Like it or not, you've been chosen.
Who chose me?
Everyone gets a second chance.
But when Spirit has a message to come through, I give it with love.
We love you.
That would be amazing!
We need to shift into a new mindset.
Come to rediscover yourself as you really are, infinite.
A completely integrated life, the physical body, the mind, the emotions, and of course the spirit.